Hi guys, what's going on, and welcome back to some more of Amazon's New World. So we've recently had a really exciting interview released by the German news company GameStar, and it was a really good interview that talked about through some of the new features, but more importantly it actually released quite a bit of new gameplay that we haven't seen before, and it's that gameplay that I want to take a look at today because it really shows us some quite interesting things about the alpha, shows us quite a bit about some more of the mechanics we might be able to expect, and shows us quite a bit of combat. Initially, the first bit of footage I want to look at seems to be an extension of the very small snippet of Siege gameplay we got to see at the end of the last developer diary, but we just get to see much more of the actual Siege battle, and we kind of get to see the UI and quite a bit more detail. So we're really only a few seconds into the first bit of footage, but I feel we've actually got to pause already to kind of dig into some of this, because there's just so much information in this one screen. I mean, initially it looks like compared to the alpha, a lot of the information in the bottom of the screen has all been shifted over to the bottom right, and we can see quite a bit of stuff. Firstly, it looks like there's three weapon abilities that are currently on cooldown. So this suggests you're going to have a series of abilities for your specific weapon class, and different abilities other than the ordinary attack are going to actually have some sort of cooldown element. A little bit to the left of that, it seems what to be an inventory icon, and further left of that we have the player's level. Currently level 50. I'm not sure if level 50 is going to represent the actual cap, or if it's actually going to be higher than this by the end of game. The guy also seems to be wielding some pretty awesomely big warhammer, which kind of shows there's going to be a pretty good range of weapons in the game, which is pretty cool. Then if we move over to the top left, it seems there's going to be some sort of partying system. Looks like there's a 5-man squad going on there. That probably suggests what the party cap is going to be, at least sort of for small scale grouping. And we can also see that obviously in some sort of siege battle, and we can see there's capture points. We can see this at the top centre of the screen. You can see the defenders are trying to hold these points, of which obviously I guess the attackers are trying to actually besiege. And we can see point C here, and it looks like it's actually represented on the ground with the red circle. It's how much it's captured by the enemy. We then see the team fighting on and actually trying to force their way through a gateway, sort of opposed by players. I was quite surprised to see how quickly his health goes down when he actually manages to get hit, so it shows that people are going to be quite vulnerable in this game. I don't think there's going to be any super invincible heroes. I think your health is going to go down pretty quickly. We also see in this clip what appears to be attacking almost like AI looking like troops, so I did kind of wonder if defenders are going to get sort of a collection of AI heroes to help them in the defence. Maybe that's going to be something that's upgradable in the town project. We then see the attackers really going up against this gateway, so obviously it is going to be possible to take down gateways without using siege weapons, although I do notice in the top right corner there is a mentioning of siege equipment and siege parts, so maybe that's obviously going to be some degree of siege equipment, but if you can just cut a gate down with heroes, then I guess it doesn't seem to be a lot of point in bringing it around. The only other thing I noticed here is that the weapon in the bottom right side of the screen is actually now turned green. So that may suggest there's going to be some sort of weapon rarity system. Maybe there's going to be a green, blue, purple or something like that, representing different grades and different qualities of weapons. So as a bit of an overview for what we're going to expect siege equipment to be like, I've really genuinely been quite pleased with this. I think it shows some pretty interesting factional warfare gameplay, and as a 50-50 fight it looks quite interesting. It looks like while some people are kind of grouped in one area, it looks like there's quite a few separate fights going on. The suggestion and hints at siege equipment is pretty exciting, although it would have been kind of cool to see some of that actually in the gameplay. The fact that sometimes we see the defenders sallying forth is also kind of interesting, so I think it's going to make for some pretty interesting factional war fights and some fights to control the various different territories. But it wasn't just the PvP siege battle footage we got in this interview, we also got to see some pretty sick PvE footage. Kind of got a bit of an idea about some of the classes and some of the monsters you're going to be fighting against. For example, that spear throw is just so badass. But it's also cool to see that it actually returns the weapon automatically and instead does it in the form of a cooldown. Interestingly, I did notice that as he switches to the sword, the cooldown actually remains from the spear throw, so you obviously can't just switch weapons to avoid cooldown. It was also cool to see that he actually leveled up sword mastery. That kind of goes to reinforce the classless system, but instead there's going to be various weapon skills. So I think it's going to be possible to have sort of both a mixed range and melee class. So instead of having the spear, you could have, say, a bow and a sword and shield, or the spear and a bow. And being able to make that combination of either all melee, all range, or melee range combinations is really kind of cool and not something you see in all that many MMOs. It's also pretty awesome that we finally got to see some actually decent PvE gameplay, as well as the earlier PvP stuff. I've been really sort of gasping for some gameplay on where the state of the game is now for quite a long time, since so much seems to have changed since back in the alpha sort of last year. And it's awesome that we're finally actually managing to get a little bit of footage starting to come out now, as more information starting to come out, particularly now as we're entering the alpha. I know a lot of it's still under NDA, but there's some stuff that's actually been starting to come out a little bit on the Reddit, so it's kind of interesting to see some of that information starting to get released, and I am still pretty hopeful about this game. I think it's got a lot of positive aspects, despite the fact that some of the elements have necessarily gone a little bit off the road. So for our final piece of footage, throwing axes. I mean, this is just so awesome. I really like the look of this. So cool to see those throwing axes in action. And it's kind of cool to see some PvE against what appears to be kind of some slightly higher level mobs. And it's kind of interesting to see how it deploys. We also notice this time it's not green, but it's got blue. So maybe my green, blue, purple prediction could end up being correct. It's obviously slightly rarer equipment. He obviously gets to use these throwing axes quite a lot, so it's kind of cool to see that there's quite a variety of different weapon types in the game. And again, if you look just above the weapon, this time you notice that he's actually got various potions, and these kind of seem to suggest that there may be some sort of elements of consumable healing or mana potions, or maybe some sort of stamina potions are going to be introduced into the game as well. So unfortunately that is actually all we have in terms of the new footage, but it was pretty awesome to get to see particularly some of that PvP siege stuff at the start. I would really love to be able to get into the alpha and kind of try some of this stuff out. Particularly some of the PvP stuff, it looks really interesting, but I think some of the PvE stuff also looks like it has some reasonable potential. I know there's certainly some pretty mixed reviews going around at the moment, and I think there's certainly some warranted concern for some of the elements, particularly the way they changed a lot of the PvP stuff from what it was originally intended to be is kind of a shame, and I'm hoping that kind of they take some of the feedback on board and sort of a more favourable middle ground is sort of found that's going to hopefully please more people. But either way, I am genuinely still really excited for this game. I think it's got a lot of potential, and I think there's a lot of interesting footage and information starting to come out now that's kind of really getting me hyped for the closed beta over in April. So I'm really excited. Anyway, that is all I've got for you today. Hopefully you found this video interesting. If it is, do let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm particularly interested to hear kind of what weapon class or what weapon type you think you'll be using most primarily when you actually get into the game. Personally, I'm thinking maybe spear and musket. That would be kind of an interesting combination, particularly with that spear throw. It just looks so awesome. I really want to use that. But anyway, I say, do subscribe to the channel for lots more New World content, and I shall see you guys all in the next video.